Lafayette Ron Hubbard was born in Tilden, Nebraska in March of 1911 as an only child. Hubbard grew up with his family in Helena, Montana. They traveled frequently because of his father's placement in the U.S. Navy. His family was Methodist, but his grandfather was described as a devout atheist. The Hubbards traveled to Washington, D.C. in 1923 aboard the USS Grant. During this trip, Hubbard reportedly received an education in Freudian psychology from Commander Joseph Snake Thompson. Thompson was a U.S. Navy psychoanalyst and student of Sigmund Freud. From 1927 to 1929, he traveled with his grandfather while his parents were in Guam on a naval mission. Later on, he spent 3 semesters at George Washington University, but was soon placed on probation in September of 1931. He failed to return and dropped out. In July of 1941, Hubbard was commissioned as a lieutenant, junior grade, in the U.S. Naval Reserve. Only a few years later, he was reprimanded and removed from command for engaging in reckless and dangerous behavior, some of which risked the lives of the men he commanded. On October 15, 1947, upon returning home from his removal from the Navy, Hubbard wrote a letter to the Veterans Administration formally requesting psychiatric treatment, but admitted that he was unable to afford it. Within a few years, Hubbard would condemn psychiatry as evil. In the 1950s, Hubbard's wife, Sarah, consulted doctors who recommended that he be committed to a private sanatorium for psychiatric observation and treatment of a mental ailment known as paranoid schizophrenia. L. Ron Hubbard originally intended for Scientology to be considered a science, as stated in his writings, although his book Dianetics was originally published in a science fiction magazine as a short story. In May of 1952, Scientology was organized to put this intended science into practice, and in the same year, Hubbard published a new set of teachings as Scientology, a religious philosophy. In December of 1953, Hubbard incorporated 3 churches: a Church of American Science, Church of Scientology, and the Church of Spiritual Engineering to create the church we know today. On February 18, 1954, with Hubbard's blessing, some of his followers set up the first local Church of Scientology, adopting the aims, purposes, principles, and creed of the Church of American Science as founded by L. Ron Hubbard. Dianetics uses a counseling technique known as auditing, in which an auditor assists a subject in conscious recall of traumatic events in the individual's past. Hubbard promised that Dianetic treatment would release and erase psychosomatic ills and painful emotions, thereby leaving individuals with increased powers of rationality. In 1951, Hubbard incorporated the electropsychometer, E-meter for short, a kind of electrodermal activity meter, as an auditing aid. Auditing is similar to confession or pastoral counseling, but the auditor records and stores all of the information received, and does not dispense forgiveness or advice as a pastor or priest of another religion might do.
It ultimately is akin to the confession. You hold these cans and through it runs a current, and apparently it's reading my emotional response to questions.
Essentially what we're doing is we're creating a circuit with your body, and it's calibrated in such a way that it will register on thought.
Right.
Okay? I'm going to pinch you, okay? Mm-hmm. You just keep an eye on that needle and watch what it does. See, you're doing it before I even do it, so you're...
In the 1970s, Scientology began to face backlash from the public. Operation Snow White was a project that included a series of infiltrations, wiretapping, and theft of documents in government offices from over 136 agencies in more than 30 countries. Members attempted to steal unfavorable information about Hubbard. 11 highly placed church executives pleaded guilty and were convicted in federal court. When faced with possible indictment, Hubbard went into hiding. He hid first in an apartment in California. He cut contact with everyone, even his wife, whom he saw for the last time in August of 1979. On January 24, 1986, L. Ron Hubbard died at his ranch in Creston, California. David Miscavige emerged as the new head of the organization. Miscavige continued to further Hubbard's philosophies and helped organize the religion into something people could practice. One of these philosophies was the eight dynamic, or the God dynamic, which sums up the individual's will to survive within the 8 levels of our universe.
What goal does every living thing have in common? Survival. You are trying to achieve the highest level of survival possible, for as long as possible. As one looks out across the confusion which is life to most people, you will find that life can actually be subdivided into 8 parts, or 8 urges toward survival. In Scientology, these are called the dynamics. The first dynamic is self. This is the effort to survive as an individual, to be an individual. It includes one's own body and one's own mind. It is the effort to attain the highest level of survival for the longest possible time for self. The second dynamic is creativity. This dynamic contains the family unit and the rearing of children, as well as anything that can be categorized as a family activity. Creativity is making things for the future, and the second dynamic includes any creativity. The third dynamic is group survival. This is the urge to survive through a group of individuals or as a group. The fourth dynamic is species. This is the urge toward survival through all mankind and as all mankind. The fifth dynamic is life forms. This is the urge to survive as life forms and with the help of all life forms. It is the effort to survive for any and every form of life. It is the interest in life as such. The sixth dynamic is the physical universe, or MEST. MEST stands for matter, energy, space, and time, which are the component parts of the physical universe. It is the urge to survive of the physical universe, and with the help of the physical universe, and each one of its component parts. The seventh dynamic is the spiritual dynamic, the urge to survive as spiritual beings, or the urge for life itself to survive. The eighth dynamic is the urge toward existence as infinity. The eighth dynamic is commonly supposed to be a supreme being or creator. Correctly defined as infinity, it actually embraces the allness of all. It is represented here by the symbol for infinity.
Scientology is markedly different from other religions in that there are no real limitations on dress, diet, or appearance. Many celebrities are outwardly spoken on their belief in Scientology, including John Travolta and Tom Cruise. Scientology's understanding of how we all came to be and how we interact with one another are represented in their philosophy of the parts of man: the body, the mind, and the thetan.
You are a being, an intelligence, a consciousness, that part of you that is aware of being aware. In Scientology, we use the word thetan. The term thetan is taken from the Greek letter theta, which has long served as a symbol for thought or spirit. We use thetan to avoid confusions with other concepts and beliefs regarding the soul or spirit. It isn't something you have. You wouldn't say, my thetan. You'd simply say, me. You have a body, you have a mind, you are a thetan.
The bridge to total freedom is the means by which Scientologists undertake personal development on their spiritual journey. The two paths down the bridge are training, which is learning about the eight dynamic and the individual practicing their understanding of their place in the infinity. The second is auditing, where individuals under the influence of past traumas undergo a process called clearing. One way to expand an individual's training on their path towards total freedom is by attending Scientology's Sunday service. The service usually begins at 11 a.m., and Hubbard's writings are read aloud during the service. A prayer for total freedom is usually recited, in which they ask the author of the universe to help them as they seek enlightenment. The way Scientology's service has been executed has not changed. The minister chooses from a limited selection of possible sermons and group processing exercises.
At any given moment or any given day, we'll have classes, workshops.
There are Sunday services,
Weddings, naming ceremonies, and then we have our open houses.
In the early 2000s, the church faced serious controversy when two former members, Mark and Claire Headley, sued the church under the Federal Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act of 2000. They alleged that the organization had violated laws against human trafficking and violated their human rights. Claire Headley states that she was banned from the dining hall for up to 8 months in 2002. She lost 30 pounds as a result of substituting on protein bars and water. In addition, she states that she was coerced into having 2 abortions to comply with Scientology's no children policy. In testimony, the Headleys said that they experienced physical violence from Scientology executives and saw others being treated violently. In court, the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects a church's right to decide matters of governance and internal organization, and the Establishment Clause forbids excessive government entanglement with religion. In the end, the charges against Scientology were dropped, but the speculation surrounding its treatment of its members is still prevalent today. In the United States, the Church of Scientology is recognized as a religion and is therefore tax-exempt by the IRS. However, many people are pushing for the status to be revoked from the church. In many other countries around the world, Scientology's status as a religion has been diminished or outright revoked, establishing them as a cult. According to Jeffrey Augustine, author of the blog The Scientology Money Project, the church has a book value of $1.75 billion, and about $1.5 billion of that is invested in real estate. He also estimates that the annual revenue collected by the church is about $200 million. Today, there are an estimated 25,000 to 50,000 active Scientologists in the United States, with the church's website boasting an estimated 4.4 million new recruits every year. Scientology is practiced in around 184 countries worldwide, but with new controversies coming to light each year, it seems reasonable that their following will diminish with time.